Hello and welcome, everyone. We are the Construction Safety Research Center, CSRC. This is the PPE Compliance Training. This training was the result of the CSRC 2021 to 2022 research cycle.
The construction industry struggles with safety performance. The CSRC helps industry leaders transfer their knowledge and extensive experience into products that save lives and improve overall industry performance. It is a collaboration of industry leaders that reduces work-related fatalities and injuries by providing construction firms with innovative safety practices derived from groundbreaking research.
The CSRC aims to reduce fatal and non-fatal incidents and return construction workers safely to their families by conducting groundbreaking safety research, transforming research recommendations into best practices, converting best practices into effective training programs. We are thankful to our current members. Membership is available to industry leaders and safety influencers. For more information, please visit the CSRC webpage.
The purpose of the PPE Compliance Training is to present and discuss the factors contributing to PPE non-compliance among construction workers and how to manage them. The objectives of this training is that upon completion of this module, safety and construction leaders will be able to explain the contributing factors to PPE non-compliance and their ranking, identify strategies and methods that enhance PPE compliance among construction workers.
There are two general directions for safety management techniques. First, manage safety by focusing on meeting OSHA's technical and training requirements to avoid penalties and enforcement actions. Second, manage safety by self-correcting, either by identifying and reporting hazards or by correcting unsafe behaviors and practices. The second is a better technique.
According to a 2022 CSRC study, U.S. construction workers are 5.5 times more likely to be killed in workplaces than non-construction workers. As a result, there is a critical need to control workplace hazards. Detecting hazards is the first step in controlling them. Control responses to recognized hazards include elimination and substitution, engineering controls, administrative controls, and the use of PPE. PPEs is the last resort in the hierarchy of control because it depends on workers' risk tolerances, perceptions, and attitudes.
This figure is the hierarchy of controls. The top part of the chart are the most effective controls, and the bottom part of the chart are the least effective controls. Elimination removes the hazard at the source. This could include changing the work process to stop using a toxic chemical, heavy object, or sharp tool. It is the preferred solution to protect workers because no exposure can occur. Substitution is using a safer alternative to the source of the hazard. An example is using plant-based printing inks as a substitute for solvent-based inks. Engineering controls reduce or prevent hazards from meeting workers. Engineering controls can include modifying equipment or the workspace, using protective barriers, ventilation, and more. Administrative controls establish work practices that reduce the duration, frequency, or intensity of exposure to hazards. This may include work process training, job rotation, and limiting access to hazardous areas or machinery. PPE refers to using personal protective equipment to safeguard workers from workplace hazards. It is considered the last resort in safety management because it does not eliminate or control the hazard itself but merely provides a barrier between the worker and the risk.
Employers should not rely on PPE alone to control hazards when other effective control options are available. PPE can be adequate, but only when workers use it correctly and consistently. PPE may seem less expensive than other controls, but can be costly over time, especially when used daily. Employers must provide PPEs when other controls are under development or cannot sufficiently reduce the exposure to workplace hazards.
When employees use PPE, employers shall implement a PPE program. While elements of the PPE program depend on the work process and the identified PPE, the program should address workplace hazards assessment, PPE selection and use, inspection and replacement of damaged or worn-out PPE, employee training, and program monitoring for continued effectiveness.
The absence of or inappropriate use of PPE are major causes of fatal and non-fatal injuries at construction workplaces. Studies show that 70% of all fall incidents involved a lack of PPE. Similarly, Al-Bayati and York found that 85% of examined fatal fall incidents among Hispanic workers in the United States were associated with not using required PPE. Also, it was found that construction workers who do not use PPE are 3 times more likely to be injured than those who do.
These are OSHA's construction top 10 violations from October 2021 through September 2022. Duty to have fall protection, fall general requirements, training requirements, eye and face protection, and head protection are all related to PPE noncompliance. This demonstrates that PPE noncompliance is a widespread issue in construction workplaces.
So, the question arises, why is PPE noncompliance such a widespread issue among construction workers? Research by the Construction Safety Research Center, CSRC, and its members reveals 16 factors contributing to PPE noncompliance. These factors can be grouped into 4 categories. First, PPE design factors. Second, safety climate factors. Third, safety culture factors. And finally, other factors.
Before diving into the 4 categories, let's first briefly discuss the construction safety culture and climate framework adopted in this presentation. In general, there are 3 dimensions of safety culture. First one is corporate safety culture, which consists of an organization's official policies, systems, procedures, and workflow. Then comes psychological safety culture, which refers to thoughts and feelings about safety. And lastly, behavioral safety culture includes employee activities, behaviors, and actions related to workplace safety.
Construction safety culture is defined by the policies and principles that guide safety-related decisions made by upper management and safety personnel. As a result, the actions of upper management and safety personnel serve as key indicators of the construction safety culture. For example, safety training, management support, safety policies, and safety manager competence are reasonable measures of construction safety culture.
On the other hand, the construction safety climate reflects how a safety culture is manifested in the workplace. The safety-related actions of supervisors, superintendents, and workers are key indicators of the construction safety climate. For example, workers' behavior and frontline supervisors' safety performance are reasonable measures for a construction safety climate. This is the construction safety culture and climate figure as proposed by Dr. Al-Bayati. The chart suggests that safety is a shared responsibility, as project stakeholders have varying levels of authority and accountability. A shared responsibility means that safety is a collective effort. Therefore, construction project stakeholders should be assigned tasks aligned with their roles to ensure superior safety performance.
This framework addresses the unique nature of construction firms, in which upper management and safety personnel often oversee multiple construction sites, each with its unique climate based on the safety actions of frontline supervisors and workers.
Research findings indicate that this framework, which was proposed in 2019, is associated with a lower experience modification rate, EMR score, positively impacts safety behavior, and has been well received by construction practitioners.
Now, let's return to the 4 categories of factors contributing to PPE noncompliance, starting with PPE design-related factors. This category centers on shortcomings in the design and fabrication of PPE wear. These shortcomings are poor quality, fit, and comfort, and second, the lack of climate adaptation, for example, workers not wanting to wear PPE such as helmets or gloves in hot climates.
The construction safety climate category includes factors related to the actions of workers and frontline supervisors. This includes, first, workers believe that PPE reduces the ability to meet performance deadlines, increases work effort, and increases restrictions. Second, inadequate safety supervision and enforcement of safe work practices can cause workers to display a negligent attitude toward PPE use and disregard safety rules. Third, peer pressure among workers insinuating that wearing PPE denotes weakness in a worker. Last but not least, poor perception of the safety risks associated with not wearing PPE. The construction safety culture category includes factors related to the actions of upper management and safety personnel, which are lack of safety training. Second, lack of management support. Third, lack of safety rules and policies. And lack of PPE availability and accessibility.
The other category includes unstable employment status where some workers, particularly those of Hispanic descent, do not always receive the necessary PPE due to their undocumented or temporary employment status, which forces them to value job security over speaking up about safety issues. Second, somatic health effects where some workers with health conditions cannot wear PPE due to physical and mental stress, especially in confined or poorly ventilated areas. Finally, cultural and language barriers. These barriers contribute to higher fatality rates among ethnic minority construction workers.
The CSRC conducted a national survey to rank the importance of factors within each of the 4 categories mentioned earlier. The high importance factors ranked as follows. First, inadequate safety supervision. Second, poor risk perception. Third, lack of climate adaptation. Fourth, lack of safety training. And fifth, lack of management support.
The moderate to high factors ranked as follows. First, poor quality, fit, and comfort. Second, PPE increases restrictions. Third, somatic health effects. And fourth, PPE increases work effort.
The moderate factors are: first, workers believe that PPE increases work time, and second, performance pressure may lead not to use PPE. On the other hand, the moderate to low factors are: first, unstable employment status. Second, lack of PPE availability and accessibility. And third, lack of safety rules and regulations. Finally, the low importance factor are: first, cultural and language barriers, and second, peer pressure.
Focus groups were conducted with industry experts to suggest proactive measures that can address the identified factors. To address inadequate safety supervision, which is of high importance, it is suggested to encourage, measure, and monitor frontline supervisor accountability. Provide safety resources like designated site safety representatives, and foster clear and professional communication between frontline supervisors and workers.
Poor risk perception, which is of high importance, is poor assessments of the risks that workers are exposed to. For example, some experienced workers rely on their experience, believing that they don't need PPE. Some young workers often see work as an adventure and are overconfident. To address poor risk perception, it is suggested to emphasize the stakes involved in noncompliance with PPE, enhance the critical thinking of workers through interactive risk perception training, for example, dialoguing with workers about what-if and worst-case scenarios.
To address the lack of climate adaptation, which is high importance, it is suggested to improve PPE supply and provide specialized training and resources for wearing PPE in adverse weather conditions. Provide cooling and heating stations for workers operating in intense weather conditions.
To address the lack of safety training, which is also of high importance, it is suggested that training be provided at the same time that PPE is provided to all new hires and as a yearly refresher. Improve management support for educational and outreach programs.
To address the lack of management support, which is high importance, it is recommended to emphasize the reputational and financial costs of accidents due to PPE noncompliance. Increase leadership involvement, visibility, for example, bringing management into the safety program to demonstrate PPE use, and accountability.
To address poor quality, fit, and comfort, which is moderate to high importance, it is suggested to improve the supply of PPE by acquiring different styles and sizes. Improve PPE training and gaining worker input on PPE fit and comfort. On the second hand, to address the belief that PPE increases of restrictions from PPE, which are moderate to high importance, it is suggested to gain worker input on potential restrictions and addressing them. Conduct case-by-case evaluations to reach a resolution.
To address somatic health effects, which are moderate to high importance, it is suggested to explore PPE alternatives for individuals with health problems and employing case-by-case decision-making. Raise worker awareness of the possible relationships between PPE use and certain health conditions. To address the belief that PPE increases work effort from PPE, which is also moderate to high importance, it is recommended to collect employee feedback on PPE options that will not adversely affect effort and encourage workers to suggest PPE alternatives. Show the costs of accidents associated with failure to use PPE. To address the unstable employment status, which is moderate to low importance, it is suggested to ensure that all employees are trained to the same standard. Develop a temporary worker program and partnership with staffing agencies. To address the lack of PPE availability and accessibility, which is moderate to low importance, it is suggested to improve PPE availability by introducing technologies such as PPE vending machines and QR codes to make PPE distribution more efficient. Improve PPE funding by obtaining available grants and allocating PPE pay items within the contracts of smaller subcontractors.
To address the lack of safety rules and regulations, which are moderate to low importance, it is suggested to ensure safety programs are up to date, post safety programs at all job sites, and communicate OSHA PPE requirements. Enforce PPE compliance and creating a sliding scale for safety performance penalties. On the other hand, it is important to note that cultural and language barriers are significant factors contributing to the high incident rates among Hispanic construction workers. To address the cultural and language barriers, it is suggested to implement multi-language literature and training. For example, images and pictures should be used in the training and foster an inclusive workplace culture.
Finally, to address peer pressure, which is low importance, it is suggested to encourage and reward positive peer pressure around PPE use, discourage negative peer pressure via effective field monitoring and education.
This study helps decision-makers prioritize resource allocation to the most critical PPE non-compliance factors. The primary root causes of PPE non-compliance are inadequate safety supervision, poor worker risk perception, lack of PPE climate adaptation, lack of safety training, and lack of upper management support.
This study illuminates the importance of addressing resource limitations, especially among residential construction firms. Project owners and general contractors should consider allocating funds specifically for safety programs when hiring smaller firms and only select contractors that agree to comply with a safety plan. Convey to construction company leaders the importance of PPE compliance and the reputational and financial costs of non-compliance. Second, enhance leadership accountability by focusing on frontline supervisors, who serve as a crucial link between upper management and field workers. Third, encourage, incentivize, measure, monitor, and reward the use of PPE. Finally, solicit worker input to provide PPE that better fits and adapts to different climates.
At the end of this brief training, we want to acknowledge that the Construction Safety Research Center exists thanks to the outstanding safety commitment, extensive experience, and generous support of the center's founding members. With that in mind, if you have any questions, please feel free to contact Dr. Ahmed Al-Bayati for further discussion on this or other safety topics. Thank you and have a safe day.